I'm referring back to your blog article
Yeah,
again
yeah, yeah.
that you wrote for SingularDTV, and in it you mentioned three problems that creators, filmmakers have
Yeah.
in the entire distribution process. Can you just address each one of those 3 points and talk about that for a moment?
Sure, I can try to if I remember what I wrote.
I've got it right here. Actually,
yeah. No. So the first problem is really this idea of the best laid plans, because I feel like there is a strong majority of folks that work in film distribution, or who are aggregators, are content curators, get into it with the best of intentions and really try and do right by the creatives and the filmmakers that they work with, and that inevitably the majority of the time their efforts are hamstrung by the requirements of their company, by issues with the amount of resources they have to work with, by someone else further down the line sort of pressing their agenda, or the limitations of the accounting network that they're dealing with.
Life happens.
Life happens, absolutely.
Within the distribution entity, the politics, the strategies, the resources, life happens.
Completely. These are these are businesses that have their own agendas, and their agendas can pivot. So because the distribution relationship is sort of a long-term one, stuff happens, right? So I could sign a film in January, and then come June when we're ready to launch it, word can come down upon high, like, no, we're actually going in this direction, and the resources that you thought you had to play with for that film are no longer there.
Right. So that's the first point that you made in your article. Now the second.
Yeah. The second point. Yeah. What was the second point?
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Can you hear me now is certainly a major problem that filmmakers and creatives are facing now.
So just to let's say you get past problem number one.
Right.
You get in with a great team.
Yep.
The relationship dynamic is excellent and awesome. The energy's there.
You've
passed that hurdle, and then
you launch your film, and it comes out into the market at the same time as 20 to 100 other films on the exact same day, on the exact same platforms. Some of them have massive budgets, to promote themselves. You may be up against studio films with the same demographic that have, 7, 8, 9-figure promotional budgets. You might even be up against indie films that are in a similar place as you, that maybe they got slightly better reviews, or maybe that filmmaker has a slightly longer track record. There's only so many slots at the theater, but nowadays, theatrical distribution isn't the guarantee for everybody. So what you're facing is just a massive noise in the marketplace.
So you've jumped 2 hurdles. You've got a great team, there's synergy there, and then you release your film, and it's going great. It's rising to the top of the pile amongst all the others, and then you have your third issue or third hurdle to deal with.
Which is actually getting paid. I can see your reaction to that.
Kim has lots of experience with
lots
this.
of stories with it.
Well, I mean, filmmaker, producer, pals of mine, and we've gone through the process of selling films a couple of times, and after you do it your second time, you're feeling like, oh, I'm going to start a production company and I'm going to make a living at doing this. You realize pretty quickly that you really can't make a living at producing films unless you have a unlimited source of funding on the front end, and you don't have a business model, a revenue business model based on the back end. I mean, there's a lot of different back end deals that happen, but we all kind of laugh. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get 25 points. And people covet points, like, oh, I don't want to give my points away because, but it's like, everyone's like, you're not going to get paid anyway. Like, give the points away, who cares? Like, get the movie made. So you can make a little money on the front end of getting a movie, but you can't sustain a living. So
I've heard people in the industry say it shouldn't be called the film business, it should be called the film hobby.
It's a hobby. You either are, somebody who has unlimited funds and this is what you do because you don't need the money, or you live with 5 people in an apartment in Brooklyn and for the rest of your life and you're fine with that, it's not a sustainable business model for a professional person.
Being an independent film producer has to be one of the it's really tough.
Well, and you have to make compromises. You have to make decisions based on what the estimates say. You do it with casting up front. At the end, maybe you're taking a distribution deal that's not as good as it could be, but there's a certain MG involved that will at least pay off your credit card. There's no
formula
there's
for
no formula.
any one way to do it. Each time you approach it, it's a completely different game, because you don't know, like you said, you don't know what else is coming out that's similar. You don't know the zeitgeist. You can't predict in 18 months or 12 months, however long it's going to take you to make it and finish it and get it out there, what else is going to be out there. You can hope for the best. I mean, I've seen amazing films absolutely fall on their face, and I've seen shitty films actually do okay, and you're like,
just based on the competition.
It's
day.
like, so sometimes there is no rhyme or reason, and it's because the current system is so unpredictable.
Yeah, and when it comes to getting paid, whether your film is a modest success, a huge success, or just squeaking by, in the vast majority of cases, you're waiting 3 to 6 months to see any money. Some platforms are a little bit faster now, where you can actually get reports that on days or weeks and maybe get paid out there, but that's one platform. Right, with a very specific, very limited reach, especially for independent creators. But in general, if you get a massive distribution footprint, and you're in 100 million homes and you're international, it's going to be months before you see any of that. And given that you've already been skating by, trying to get this thing made and funding it, begging, borrowing, stealing, whatever you have to do for sometimes years. And then you even press further to market it and push it. Where you don't have a full-time job at this point. Like this is your thing, right? This is your baby, and now you have to wait 3 to 6 months to even see how you did. It's just completely unsustainable. There's no like working class filmmaker. There's no middle class for this business.
So we know the pain, we know the problems. What are we going to do about it?
That's a great question. I mean, I think even to date, what you guys have put together is coming closer to an answer to that than we've seen before. For me, I think the strength is in more transparency than we've seen anywhere else in the industry, more control over what you do with your project, what money gets spent on behalf of getting it out in the world, what the trajectory is. As important as sort of gatekeepers and middlemen have been to date to curate, now it's essentially unnecessary. The technology is there, the capability is there, right? And so what we need to do is to put the artists back in control of their work. Some artists are doing that and have been doing that on their own, but I think what SingularDTV is creating is a way for all artists to do that. And I think what's going to come of that is going to be really exciting and interesting to follow.